to talk about, okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, now today we're going to talk about building sustainable development and integrate energy efficiency in projects. And you're going to see all the sessions coming. Click. My main goal with the whole training, it's for you as decision makers, visionary people, leaders, to become the heroes of the events you have to face, because I know that you have to help to implement the energy efficient measures and sustainability principles and concept. I would like for you through that to be able to implement projects that respect the environment, respond to practically all social and energy efficiency issues your communities have to face. And of course, reaching the healthy revenues that will help you to offer sustainable and energy efficient development projects and appropriate services for people who live in your projects. This is what I have in heart for you to get with this training. Click. Now, the goal with this training in particular is going to focus on sustainable approach. One of the sustainable approach that we're going to promote is sustainable community design, or SCD. Some of you may have heard of that here in New Brunswick. But basically, we believe by using that approach, you can respond to practically all issues your population may have with developments, including energy efficient measures, integrate the projects that will allow you to respond to climate change, offer affordable communities and housing, and increase your revenues with development. And we're talking about here of 5 sessions for this training. The first 4 sessions are basically information that we're going to provide. And the first one today is, of course, building sustainable developments with integrating energy efficiency in projects. It's about an hour of information. But in October, we're going to talk about creating affordable communities and housing. In November, it's going to be integrating gray and green infrastructure. In January of 2023, we're going to talk about protecting the natural environment and provide the best returns on your investments. And after that, we're going to take all that information that was provided, and we're going to do a practical exercise that is going to show you how you can do it practically in your community to bring a project. And that is going to be the workshop of 3 hours. So you can see that there's a kind of progression here of information and how to use that information in a project. Okay, click. Oh, just before, yeah. Probably you're going to ask the question, who are you? Some of you know me and some don't. I'm the president of my own company. It's called Deco Design. And I'm a registered professional planner with the Canadian Institute of Planners. I have a master's degree in business administration and one also in urban planning from McGill. I have 35 years of experience in planning with a specialization in sustainability in the private, the public, and the NGO sectors. I received a few years ago from the Gulf of Maine Council a visionary award regarding the implementation of the approach we're going to talk about, the sustainable community design approach that was implemented at the Village en Haut-du-Ruisseau, one of the projects I'm going to talk about. And I'm a senior associate with Quest. Quick. Okay, this first session, click, is basically think about that. Today, we're just going to talk about the framework, okay? We're just going to talk about how the approach is going to be used in order for me to have the pieces of the puzzles that are going to be inside of that. Okay, and eventually we're going to talk about integrated plan and how it works all together. Click. And the first question that comes to your mind probably it's what is energy efficiency? Because it's one thing to talk about sustainability, but you're thinking, okay, energy efficiency, what we're talking about here when we're talking about sustainability. And the best, or I should say the simplest definition that I found, it was from the States, from the Environmental and Energy Study Institute. And basically what they say, it's energy efficiency simply means using less energy to perform the same task, that is eliminating energy waste. Click. Basically, it relates to community design, to buildings, to energy generation, distribution, vehicles, freight, human behavior, mode of life. Click. And think about that. I mean, the buildings, the energy generation, distribution, vehicles, freight, how we live is going to take place in the community. And the design of the community. And the design of the community is going to have a tremendous impact on the building, on the energy, the generation, distribution, the vehicles, everything that is taking place over there. Click. Now I'm going to do a segue here, and I'm going to ask for Eddie to move on with presentation more on smart energy communities. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Danielle. And I'd like to continue with that energy lens in just a moment. For those of you who have joined us, my name is Eddie Oldfield. I'm a senior lead for projects with Quest Canada. And for more information, please go to our website. So sticking with that community perspective, smart energy communities often begin by taking greenhouse gas emissions inventories and developing what they sometimes call community energy plans or climate action plans. And these incorporate many principles. Community energy plans that aim to reduce emissions, lower energy costs, and keep energy dollars in the community. And what I mean by that is that a community of around, let's say, 20,000 people can spend upwards of $65 million on energy per year as a community. So for every 1% reduction that can be achieved through one of these plans, they can keep over $500,000 in the local economy. And so many of these communities, over 400 in Canada to date, have adopted targets that are well over 1% reduction in energy use and emissions in their community. And so we can quickly see that community energy planning in all its forms has a direct economic development and benefit to the community. Quest developed the following principles in order to guide the effective implementation of community energy plans. It incorporates both technical and policy principles. The first of which, as you might be aware, is improving energy efficiency, reducing the energy input required for a given level of service, as Danielle just explained. It's also making sure not to use high quality energy in low quality applications. Then it comes to managing heat. It's capturing feasible thermal energy and using it rather than exhausting it. Reducing waste, using all available resources such as landfill gas and municipal, agricultural, and industrial and forestry wastes. Looking at opportunities to develop local renewable energy resources. This could include geo-exchange systems, small-scale hydro, biomass, biogas, solar, and wind energy, as well as district heat and interseasonal storage. Using energy systems more strategically, optimizing those systems and using them as a resource to ensure reliability and to incorporate local renewable resources. Policy principles, and perhaps the most important for today, are to use matching land use needs with both clean energy and mobility options in the community, as well as matching energy options to local context, whether that's local climate or building on land use choices, as well as the availability of local sources of renewables. And we call that the smart energy community approach. Another way to look at this, since there is an increasing amount of choices for communities that they can make with regards to energy, it helps to frame it through an energy decision-making hierarchy. It's based on the principle that you first should look at opportunities to reduce demand through conservation and energy efficiency. In buildings, this would be energy conservation measures. For waste, it would be reducing the amount of waste going to landfills. And from a transportation perspective, this would be reducing trips and trip distances. Once all those options to maximize efficiency have been exercised across a community, it often makes good economic sense to consider other alternatives like the integration of renewable energy or fuel switching. Land use planning also has an overarching impact on these three buckets, as density and land use mix can help create the conditions for these reductions. Let's take a closer look at how land use and energy are connected. So we oftentimes think about quick hitting energy efficiency projects for equipment and buildings, like installing LED light bulbs or solar panels and recommissioning buildings. But one of the greatest factors in enabling a broader energy transition, specifically if we're going to net zero, is land use planning. Most energy related decisions start from a specific policy and land use decision created at the local level. These decisions in turn influence the decisions at the site and building level, which in turn impacts the types of energy using equipment selected for a building on a yearly basis. The key takeaway here is that land use decisions can impact energy use and greenhouse gas emissions for years, and in many cases, decades. So one way to visualize this would be to picture your favorite remote suburban neighborhood, low density, single use neighborhoods zoned only for that purpose, increase transportation demand by requiring longer driving distances and more trips. Compare suburbia with more complete compact neighborhoods with higher population densities and a diverse mix of land uses, which can increase walking and cycling opportunities and increase public transit viability. So mixed use communities also provide a stronger business case for district energy by generating a geographically concentrated energy demand and a residential and commercial building mix that balances the heating load over a course of a day. Rural and urban communities alike have a role to play here through land use bylaws and development incentives to encourage compact, complete communities and to adopt and enforce the federal building code. Finally, planning provides the framework for ensuring communities are built according to specific land use and building bylaws while protecting their environment. Planning decisions made today will affect the long-term benefits and the impacts of our energy systems. To meet net zero by 2050, a transition is taking place. Instead of centralized energy systems, we are moving towards a more distributed energy resources and smarter grids. However, the technologies such as efficient appliances, wind and solar power, energy storage, electric vehicles are often implemented at the local level in our communities where planning and building decisions are being made. And so with that context, I'd like to now pass it back to Danielle for the bulk of the presentation. And I'll stop sharing my screen, Danielle, so you can take over. And you're muted. Danielle, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Okay, is it better? Yes.
That is good. That is good. Now you can share your screen.
Okay, we're getting there. Okay, the presentation now. Thank you, Eddie, for this kind of context that we have to understand and how it fits with the land use planning. Now, one of the first questions that people are going to ask is going to be sustainable developments. When we talk about that, what is that? It's one of the first questions we ask. And of course, people are getting with a lot of definitions, but the one, that I found the easiest to understand, it was from an African delegate to Johannesburg and Rio +10, and he defined it that way: enough for all, forever. Okay. And basically what he was saying is, if you're going to have sustainable developments, it's going to create sustainable communities. It's not that complicated to understand. And we say, okay, fine and dandy. Now,
Daniel, please share your screen. Share your screen, please.
I cannot share my screen. Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. Can I share it now?
Yes, please do, and hit your slideshow.
Okay. So as I just mentioned, sustainable development has been defined as enough for all, forever. If we understand that, and we understand that sustainable developments create sustainable communities, we're going to illustrate that. Imagine for a second that you want to be elected as a councillor or a mayor, okay? So you're going to see the people in your community, and you're going to ask them, okay, what type of community do you want, and what basically is making you tick? And we can summarize it that way. Please give me all the services I want: fresh air, clean water, and undisturbed natural areas, have more services and amenities. Oh, by the way, I want to have Anne of Green Gable type of setup for where I live. I would like me to have urban agriculture or community garden close to where I live. I heard that energy efficiency is very important, so why not me to have it in my community? This is my car, don't ever touch it. And I heard also that we have to have a response to greenhouse gas emission and climate change. I don't want to see my neighbor barbecuing, but doesn't mean that I don't want to see my neighbor. So I would like to have a place where we could meet. And excuse the pun here, but obesity is a big problem in our community. So why not to do something with that? Why not to have trails where we can walk, where we can bike, where we can walk the dog? And I met also a community before, town of St. Andrews. I really liked their setup of downtown and how it is. I'd like to see that in our community. Our kids are getting a bit pudgy, so why not for them to walk and to bike to school? Why not to have the bus system that is going to be part of our community? And I want to have the virgin forest. I want to have the subway. I want to have the ambulance that comes when I call them, the policeman at my door when I call them. I want to have the snow being removed before it falls. I'd like to have my kids being picked up right at the front door. And of course, I want to have the firemen to be there when I call them. This is my house. I want to have everything to cost less and certainly pay less taxes. And this is you. And you're asking, is it realistic? Okay. And that represents basically how we can summarize it. But I'm going to go a bit more in detail here. Can we, at the same time, increase the revenues, protect the environment, address most social issues, and attain energy efficiency all at the same time? I'm going to be very specific. Why not for the builder to have at least 4 times more revenues? Why not for the community to provide all the services that they need and to have at least 10 times more tax revenues than what they have with conventional projects that are built in the community? Why not for the people that are asking in our community to have also 50% of protection of any property that is more than 5 acres? And why not to respond to all social issues with design that we can, of course, answer with design? And why not to have energy efficient neighborhoods with mixed use developments and walkable, bikeable areas? And the simple answer is yes, it's possible to do something like that. However, we have to understand the context here. And the municipal or community context is like that. We want to meet the triple bottom line in sustainability, and that includes the energy efficiency measures. And of course, we want to have the finances of municipalities that are going to be sustainable. We want to create affordable housing in our communities and to have a response to social issues. And of course, we want to fight climate change in ways that it's practical. But we're facing in our small communities depopulation. We're facing also the fact that we're not really benefiting from energy efficiency measures, and the investments in our communities are really low. But what we do, it's keep calm and it's business as usual. That means no energy efficiency benefits here. Operation costs not linked to tax revenues. We manage depopulation and low investment, and zoning is going to drive our developments and our policies. And what is going to be really the result of that? If we ask ourselves the question, we shouldn't be surprised by the result. Nothing changes. Now, we should ask the question ourselves, why? Why is it like that? And one of the main problem with this context is the main instrument we use in planning is zoning. Doesn't mean that zoning is bad by itself, but think about that. The objectives that are set in the community, we use an instrument that is called zoning bylaw, zoning regulation, and it's going to be implemented at the local level. We put inside of the funnel in order that it's going to go through zoning document, everything that deals with the finance, with the social, with the environment inside of that. And we're going to say at the end, what is the minimum to respect in order to have the natural environment that is not going to be too disturbed, okay? The implementation is going to be at the local level, of course. And here it's important to understand one thing. The minimum to respect does not mean the maximum to reach with sustainability. And that being said, can we do better? Can we use a sustainability approach that is going to make a difference here? Of course, I mean, we start with the same thing, the triple bottom line that we want to reach, including the energy efficiency measures. We are facing the same thing, depopulation, benefits of energy efficiency that we're not seeing, and the low investments. But we do something here that is going to be different. We change. We're going to improve our energy efficiency measures, change the density policies, position ourselves at the world stage, and use a sustainable approach with our community, with any development in our community. And the results, we shouldn't be surprised, it's going to be benefit from energy efficient measures that are going to be there. There will be a link with tax revenues to development densities, and we're going to attract immigrants, and the investment and sustainability is going to drive the development. Now, if we recap a bit what we just said, basically, we're talking about the financial challenges that the communities are facing. We're putting with that depopulation, low investment, and the fact that we're not seeing the energy efficiency measures benefits in our communities. And also we have to consider the fact that we have to take the issues with the environment and the issues with social that we're having the effect, we're living with the effect of that in our communities. And we should ask ourselves, is it possible to solve all of that all together and integrate something that is going to make sense in a sustainable way in our community? And what we're saying here is, yes, it's possible with an approach that is going to promote sustainability. And what we're going to talk about in this training is going to be why not going to use a sustainable community design approach. And we're going to go more in detail with that. But first, I mean, we're going to ask ourselves, with the approach that is promoted right now in a conventional way in our community. Think about that. I mean, you have a builder, for example, that is going to come to a municipality and they're going to ask for a building permit just to have their property, say, I mean, a 25-acre property. They would like me to develop that, and they were going to ask their development officer, where are the places where they shouldn't build? And of course, I mean, the development officer is going to say, the environmental constraints such as floodplains, wetlands, and places where you shouldn't build, here are it is on your property. And they're going to follow a sequence that we shouldn't be surprised. First of all, lot lines. Secondly, the street and lot layout. Thirdly, the location of house sites. And the last step is going to be if ever there's land that is left, we're going to call it open space or park, okay? Now, with the sustainable community design approach, it's a bit different. Of course, I mean, the application is the same. The environmental constraints are going to be the same. However, we're going to do one step more. We're going to walk that site and find the significant features from that site from a biological, historical, or cultural point of view that should be protected. And now we're going to consider first the open space, second, the location of houses that are going to be around the open space. After that, we're going to play a kind of exercise, a 3-year-old exercise to connect the dots with the houses to have an idea of how the roads are going to go. And the last one is going to be the lot lines. Have you noticed one thing here? The sequence is totally different. What we are putting the emphasis on is what it's going to happen at the end. And that is important to understand. Okay, now the SCD approach, the main feature of that, it's having a protection of at least 50% of any sizable property to subdivide, okay? That means more than 5 acres. Now, we're aiming here at protecting what we call the green asset or the green infrastructure. And the point is, people don't buy a house, they buy an environment. And people are going to be attracted to green asset or green infrastructure that is going to be around. So in order for me to build something that looks like what you see at the sketch at your right, it means that we're going to need a kind of a plan that is going also to include energy efficient measures. And that plan is going to consider an approach, okay? The approach itself, when we think about that, we have the objectives that the community would like to bring. And we're using an approach now that is going to take all these objectives and we're going to integrate them in order to have a local implementation. So take it in the funnel, you have it integrated plan, and now it's implementation at the local level. It includes, of course, I mean, the main target here is the triple bottom line objectives. It includes also the energy efficient measures. And it's important to understand that the SCD approach, or Sustainable Community Design approach, allows the communities to reach their objectives with sustainability, okay? Now, what does it mean? It means, first of all, that we're going to try to have a process that includes all the principles that are relevant for the community project we want to develop in our community. Could be smart growth principles, could be other organizations. And basically, we want to link, for example, density to tax revenues. We want to attract immigrants to higher investments. And we want, I mean, to implement sustainable developments, including, of course, I mean, energy efficiency measures. Okay. When you use an approach that brings sustainability, there are many organizations that are going to provide principles. I mean, name it. I mean, Smart Growth Principle, Awani Principle, New Urbanism Principle, Agenda 21. I mean, there are several organizations that are going to provide some principles in sustainability. So find the ones that are the most relevant for what you want to reach with your community and integrate the principles that will bring sustainability in order for me to have a relevant response for reducing greenhouse gas emission and also responding to climate change in ways that make sense. Also, try to have a maximum of benefits of energy efficiency that is going to happen in your community when you're building. Okay, as we just mentioned here, this also relates to a plan. We need a plan, but in order to have a plan, you're going to need some training, and the training is essential. And today, for example, I mean, the first session of this training in order to get to a plan that makes sense, where we're going to build in a sustainable way in our small community, okay? Or it could be bigger communities. The size, I mean, it's not too irrelevant at this point. It's just where you want to bring your project. Now, one of the necessary elements to create a SCD community project, if you want me to have a project in your community or a sustainable community design, you need to have at the same time the land where it's going to happen, the capacity of doing it, and also the funding that is going to come with that. What does it mean? It means possible agreements with organization between the community itself and the builder. And you need to have also an organization that is going to help you to get the energy efficient measures, the response to climate change and social issues and affordable communities and housing that is going to basically bring the capacity of doing something where you're going to have also the right partnerships, and you're going to be able to have a project that is going to take shape. And of course, you need the funding in place and the deep pockets where you're going to know that it's going to happen. And we're going to come back to that in the training session later during the year. Okay, now, if I just talk to you about that information and I don't have a case study, you would say, okay, fine and dandy, it's just a theory, my friend. But I'm going to tell you the story at Le Village en Ruisseau with this man that you see in the picture. His name is Charles Poirier. He's the builder or developer for that project. And he lives in Dieppe. So Charles had a 25-acre property, and he went to see the people of Dieppe. And he asked them, he said, okay, could you tell me how many houses or units I'm allowed to build on my property of 25 acres? And the municipality said, with the zoning that we have in place over there, it's only 5 units. You look at them and he said, are you nuts? I'm not going to make a cent with that. So I would like me to have a rezoning. And the municipality said, okay, we're not against rezoning, but it's going to be based on the criteria that we're looking for. First of all, you should protect the natural area of your site that we're going to define with you. Secondly, you should have at least 20% of the units that are going to be built there as defined affordable housing by us, not by you. And at the time, it meant $100,000 per unit, okay? And thirdly, you should have energy efficient measures with a new approach that is called sustainable community design. And it's where I was asked to be the coordinator of this project. So I work with him, and Charles Poirier is not stupid, okay? So that guy, he made clear right from the get-go, he said, look, I have nothing against something that is different, but I want to make sure that I'm not going to lose my shirt. And I said, that's fair, fair comment. And we're going to do the first thing that is going to walk your site, and we're going to determine what is the protection area. And on this 25-acre property, we were able to determine that 63% of the property should be protected. And Charles at that point stopped the process. And he understood for the first time that what people buy, it's not a house, it's an environment. And the plus value is coming from the green asset. So he came back to me and he said, look, I have another 5 acre of land that is south of that property. Can I just attach that 5 acre to that 25 acres? So now we're talking about 30 acre land, and call it, I mean, a green space. And I said, yeah, for sure. So now, I mean, we have a conservation area that represents 76% of the property itself. what happened to me with that, the outcome shall, because he followed the guidelines we told them, have conservatively sales revenues of at least 40 million versus only 2.5 million if it would have been with a conventional project. And the municipality is also getting their benefits by having taxation revenues, because there are more density over there, of $620,000 per year versus only $40,000 per year for practically the main service, the same services that they would have to provide it if it would be a conventional project. And I'm going to come back to these numbers later during the training sessions, okay? So, but for now, I mean, it's just the story itself. And what happened to me with a story like that, my goodness, I mean, you bet that there would be organizations, FCM, other organizations that are going to say, oh my goodness, this is so different, would like me to recognize it and would like me to provide awards. And he received several awards. I'm going to come to that in a moment. And the reason why I tell you this story is because it's not to brag about what happened to him, but it's to tell you that you can get similar results also yourself if you're going to use an approach in sustainability that is going to help you. Now, how does it look, that approach? Well, think about that. Imagine that you have a 25-acre, take the sketch at your left, that is 25 acres of land, and you're going to ask your development officer how many units or houses you're going to be able to build over there. And for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to say 75, okay? So 75 houses that are built around the environmental constraints, floodplain, wetlands, name it, I mean, places where you shouldn't build, okay? It looks like what it's shown on the sketch on the left. But if you take the same houses, you didn't change anything to the houses, but have a different design that is going to be around not only the environmental constraints, but also what is important for the community from a biological, historical, or cultural point of view. You add that together and you call it a conservation area. Now you have a green asset that becomes a plus value, and you have built around the green space. Now, how it was implemented at Le Village-en-Haut-du-Ruisseau, it was kind of interesting for him. It was a lot of energy efficient measures that were put in place, but just to give you an idea, the sensitive and significant areas that we were able to determine on this site represented about 75–76% of the property that was developed over there. That represents a carbon saving of 1,260 tons. It also have the characteristics that you can see here. The coniferous on the north side, for example, have lower exposure to winds in the winter. You can justify the use of transit system and bike trail simply because you have higher density versus if it would have been a conventional project of only 5 houses. Most of the roads are east-west orientation. So it means that the main portion of the buildings are going to be south orientation. So energy efficiency is there. Fewer roads per unit because you have higher number of units versus if you would have had the same length of road with only 5 houses over there. Shading and reducing is reducing overheating in the summer and provide also protection from winds. And of course, you have to understand where the context is. In this case, I mean, Boulevard Dieppe is close by. It's connected to Boulevard Dieppe through a walking trail and also biking trail. So you offer other modes of transportation than only the particular, the individual car. And we're talking here of energy or energy efficient measures that relates to building efficiency, energy efficiency, walkable, bikeable, and also the main ingredient here that would be higher density from 5 units to 217 units. That's quite a number of units that are being built over there on 24% of the property. And what happened, I mean, with that, you have organizations like the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Gulf of Maine Council, Clean 50 Top 15 project that recognized in 2015 that project as being outstanding for Canada. And L'Ordre des urbanistes du Québec wanted to show to their young planners how to build in sustainable ways, and they were giving the example at Le Village en Ruisseau. Now, today, this is how it looks. This is a Google map, so I look at the year, it's about 2018. And even, I mean, if you go there, you're going to see, I mean, there are more buildings that have been built, but the buildings that have been built are located at the right place, not to infringe on the important features and also the environmental constraints. Okay, I'm going to stop here just to tell you that the second session we're going to have, it's going to be on creating affordable communities and housing. And if ever you, of course, I mean, we're going to look for your question. And if ever you're interested to have the sustainable community design approach being implemented in your area, feel free just to get in touch with me and we can talk about that. At this point, I'm just going to ask Eddie to.
Yes, thank you very much, Danielle. Thanks for providing all of that context. It's really great to get going with this series. I'd like to just say that we did get one comment in the chat, but I'd like to open the floor as well. So I'll just start with the comment in the chat, which was Danielle, Mark Reed had asked, do you have additional information on the subdivision, like the year of approval, exact location? And Susan Dean shared a link to Clean 50, the case study of the project.
If I have a link with, what is the first question?
Do you have additional information on the subdivision?
Oh my goodness, yes. This is the part of the training where today we talk only about the framework, okay? But the rest of the training is going to come back to the example that we're going to use. We're going to use the example of Le Village en Ruisseau just to show you how it came in place, how it was implemented. And by the way, if ever there are people interested to visit the place and they would like me for me to go with them and to show them how it works and what didn't work as much as we would like, feel free, just get in touch with me. It's going to be my pleasure to do it. I mean, we use it as an example and people can see what works well and what works not that well. Okay, so we have both. And we're going to talk more about that with the other sessions, session 2, 3, and 4. And session 5, it's where you're going to implement the whole thing altogether. Okay.
Okay, and I've put your contact details into our chat for anyone who would like to reach out.
Sure.
Are there questions from the floor? Anyone have a burning question for Danielle or myself? Don't all go at once now. Jennifer Jarvis is asking, what type of housing was used in Le Village?
Interesting questions, by the way. It's a mix. Has been not only single family detached, because Charles Poirier was with the idea at first that it should be only one type because they were used to see that in zoning. But we told them, we said, look, Charles, we're not experts in where the market is and what is the market that you should have. When we're talking about a residential unit, it could be single family detached, single family attached, it could be townhouses, it could be apartment buildings, could be condos, could be whatever you think is appropriate. And we're going to work with that in order to get a number of units that makes sense with the density.
All right, thanks, Danielle. We have another question from Luc Willette. How is this different than conservation design first proposed by Randall Arendt?
Very good question, because when I was working developing the concept of sustainable community design applied here in New Brunswick, I get in touch with Randall Arendt, okay? And I was working with him. And basically, I have a big book, that we were able to work with for New Brunswick that is based on the context of New Brunswick. Because Randall Arendt, he was working with me, and he understood that the context is extremely important. And it's the same type of principles that would make sense with building in a sustainable way that we can have for a project that he would have, for example, in his books, Growing Greener, or the other one is Conservation Design for Subdivision. Okay, he has these two books that relates to something similar. And but if you use only what is written there and try to implement it in your community, it won't work, because you need to understand the context, the Canadian context, and also the New Brunswick context, and how the Community Planning Act works, and what are the instruments, the planning instruments that make sense to use, and how it's going to be done. And also, we have integrated all the principles for smart growth principles and how technology can work also to help and in building in a more sustainable way.
We have some good follow-up questions. I'd like to start with how early was the municipality involved in the development process? And sort of how long did it take for the discussions and consultations to secure a development approval?
Very good question. In 2004, we started with the municipality at the time, and it was really the first time that we were trying to bring the context, the concept itself within the context of New Brunswick. And we were thinking, okay, it's going to be at least, a year. But I was surprised, myself, how fast it went, because after about 6 months, it was practically finished. Okay, everything that deals with design and with how we're going to work with that. But Charles Poirier stopped the process. Stop, not start. Stop the process at that point. And that was really something that surprised me. I never thought that he would stop the process. But it was really the first time where he realized people don't buy a house, they buy an environment. And for him, the fact that the green space is going to be the plus value, why not, to add even, more green space? I was really surprised. I never thought, it would be possible to see something like that. And it worked really well. It was a process that was stopped and restarted, because the builder wanted to do it that way. It's not because, we were not ready to go.
And so I'm not sure if that totally answered Joe's questions in terms of how long it took to secure the approval. Do you want to just comment briefly on that?
Yeah. Well, the municipality wanted to use the zoning and the zoning application and having a rezoning being done with one of it was one of the instruments in zoning. I keep forgetting what it was, but it was a bit cumbersome because it was lot by lot, rezoning lot by lot. And I told at the time I was working with Gérard Belligot and André Daigle. And I told them, I said, look, you should use a planning instrument that we have in the Community Planning Act, that is the development scheme. And because people didn't use that instrument that much in New Brunswick, they were thinking, okay, it's better, I mean, just to go with zoning. But it was cumbersome as an instrument to use. It's better to use an instrument that is more appropriate, and definitely a development scheme is better because it's between a municipal plan and the zoning provisions, and it's in between. So it means that it's going to supersede any provisions that wouldn't be appropriate for the type of project we want to bring. And you will have specific provisions that are going to fit the project you want to bring on that property.
I got one last question, Danielle. We have 2 minutes till we wrap up with a poll for the participants today. If any of you would like to stay on for a few extra minutes, we're amenable to that. But this final question comes from James Jensen. Did prospective buyers and realtors exhibit resistance to the unusual in the community design concept? And if so, what marketing techniques were used to achieve the sales target?
It's a good question. Okay, if you wouldn't be in New Brunswick, you would say, yes, I mean, definitely me, they had marketing, blah, 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 something like that. At one point, the minister of my department, when I was working for the province, wanted me to make a promotion of the subdivision because it was really, I mean, the first time it was done. And I remember me knocking at the door of the people that were already living there, okay? Because it started with phase 1, phase 2, blah, 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 just going on. So I remember knocking at the door at one point, and one guy answered the door and he said, by the way, are you going to talk too much about that subdivision to people to come in that subdivision? And I said, well, I'm not in the marketing itself, but I guess, I mean, the builder can do that. He said, well, I would prefer not. And I was really surprised. He said, well, think about that. He said, we love it so much over there, and it's so much what we wanted, that we want our friends and family to join us, and we don't want to talk about it. So it was surprising, because they say it's rare that you've ever seen a subdivision like that. So I said, oh, okay, well, I guess. But
so at this point, we're at the top of the hour, and thank you very much, Danielle, for your presentation. I'm going to ask one question while we launch the poll. So Hilda, if you wouldn't mind sharing the poll. Marcus Garnett has asked Danielle, are there sidewalks or trails between Le Village and the commercial core of Dieppe?
If there's a sidewalk, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Are there sidewalks or trails between Le Village and the commercial core of Dieppe?
Yes, yes. And it's also integrated to the big network of biking, and also how it's going to relate to the commercial areas. There are plans also to even, I mean, expand it. And we're going to talk about that during the training. I mean, we're going to get in the detail of how it was done, how it was approached, and how it's going to have an effect on the big overall overview of how we can integrate everything all together in the municipality of Dieppe.
Danielle, is there anything you would like to add at the end of today's session?
Yeah, well, I'd like me to thank people for being here. It's very, it's hard on my heart to, I find it very warming for me to have so many people that are interested to hear about it, because they know that they want to help their communities. So thank you. I would like me to say thank you to you people for coming and knowing that you want to yourself, you want to help your community to build better and to build in a more sustainable ways. And you're looking for different ways of doing it. And this approach is one approach that could help you in that way. And I hope, I mean, it's going to make a difference for you. And I would like him also to thank you, Eddie and Elda, for your help. Of course, I mean, Quest has been great with us. And of course, we have to say that today it was possible to have a training like that because of the ETF funding. So thank you again for the government of New Brunswick.
Thank you, Danielle. And we look forward to receiving all of you at the next session in October. Helder Enian will be sending out the calendar invite for putting in your calendars.
Okay. Well, by the way, Eddie, are we going to just go on with discussion if people wants to stay? If
yeah, we can end the recording.